What will the 2010s be remembered for? Part 2. This is Dive, a podcast about where our Google searches take us. I'm Dan, and I'm here with my friend Cody.
I'm Cody.
And this is part 2, baby.
Part 2. Horn, horn, horn. Horn, horn.
At the time of recording, this is part 2 of 2, but who knows, that might change because we talked way more than we expected in part 1.
Yeah, that was
a marathon.
Yeah.
So now we're jumping in. We're at 2015, baby. Talk to me.
The big news out of 2015, and this is going to take up 2015 because the other thing was like Windows 10. Right? Windows 10 is not going to go down in history as the best Windows to ever exist.
No, Windows XP is.
Just Windows. Windows 95, bruh.
Actually, I want to say 98 SE. Top tier Windows version.
What I want to talk about is that in 2015, full genome sequencing became mainstream.
Okay, you're going to have to explain what the hell that means.
Genome sequencing, essentially, what it means now is like, this opens up a bunch of opportunities for them to take a piece of your blood, a drop of your blood.
Okay.
And sequence what you look like on a genetic level, piece by piece by piece.
Oh, man. You're not taking my blood, by the way.
Right now, and in the past, right, we understood DNA, we understood genetics. But what this is going to do, and I guarantee you this is what it's going to be, we're going to be able to treat illness on a very specific basis.
I hope so.
So instead of saying, oh, you have headaches, we're going to give you Tylenol, they're going to say, you, Dan, specifically need this amount of this thing, and this is how it's going to help you. That's just the start, because over time, I'm going to predict, and maybe I won't be alive for this, but things like Tylenol are going to be irrelevant. Because, again,
amazing.
Over time with genome sequencing, people are going to be able to choose what kind of children they want to have. You're going to have bigger, faster, stronger babies that won't be susceptible to certain illnesses or certain diseases or certain birth defects of any kind.
I was hoping you'd get here because I'm really wanting to talk about this. You probably listened to that Joe Rogan where they were talking about this.
That was Jamie Metzel.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the same one.
A couple of things that really stuck with me from that talk was, first off, saying, we can design the babies however we want them to be. You can eliminate the ones that are weak, pick out the strong. I know tons of ethical problems there, obviously. But then he was saying, like, the conspiracy theory, and Joe was saying how, what happens to all the sperm and eggs that didn't make the cut? Do they go to some, like, Russian facility where they all get turned into clones and, like, bred to be a certain way? Like, you could see super rich, dictators building armies based off of this technology in the not so short-term future. Or I guess long-term future would be the correct way to end that sentence.
Mean, what's the difference between altering humans as they currently are to be the biggest, fastest, strongest they can be, and doing it before they are even conceived?
I guess there's not much.
It's not. And I think what it comes down to is, I understand the ethical problem for people of faith, and I understand the ethical problem for people who think that like a post-apocalyptic nightmare is going to be happening. I get that. I think that the possibility of eliminating genetic diseases that run in families, like the like breast cancer and alcoholism and things like that, I am 100% all for getting rid of those things prior to somebody being born. Like, you're saving people a lot of strife and pain and things like that. And your mind can go to a very bad place very fast.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And this podcast isn't sitting here trying to make a pitch for us to go down a genetic sequencing, test tube baby thing. I'm just saying, like, the possibility of what these things could do is phenomenal. And this is just the beginning of it. Yeah. Like, 100 years ago, we didn't even know this stuff existed. Like, people didn't know how genetics worked, really.
Yeah, they were still, putting leeches on your plague wounds or whatever.
I mean, the Spanish flu knocked out all those people, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not we've come so far so fast, and hopefully we're keeping up with these things. And part of it is, making things cheaper. And that's what this part is. Like, genetic sequencing has become mainstream. Therefore, it has become cheaper to do, which means we can do more research on them. And I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of pushback at first about what it can and can't be used for. But I don't believe that like the government or doctors, specifically doctors, would be the ones sitting there trying to do horrible things. Like,
yeah, I mean, overall, I think the positives just firmly outweigh the negatives that could potentially happen here.
Yeah. And I think that when it comes down to gets to a point where people are thinking about doing that before they have children, there are going to be a bunch of policies in place. Like, it's not going to be allowed to just start creating babies based on genetics. That's not how it can work. That's not how government policies work. But also people who have trouble having children, this is going to be a massive help for these people, right? Because it's not just about picking the perfect child. It's about being able to have children as well.
Well, so here's the other thing that stuck with me from that podcast was that at some point, once this technology is mainstream and you're able to select, okay, I don't want my child to ever have Alzheimer's. I'm just going to eliminate that gene. Boop, gone. I don't ever want them to have cancer. Boop, gone. I want them to be at least 6 foot tall. Boop, gone. But then once you get to this point where you can do this, and this is considered more mainstream, will it ever be, and I think Jamie Metzel's point was that it would be, unethical to not do that? So you're looking at people who want to conceive babies the normal way, normal to us in 2019. That might be unethical because the result of that could be a baby born with a lot of defects or, long-term or chronic pain or chronic illness down the road. So like the idea that it will be so mainstream that it's unethical to, experience, what it means to be human in a certain way, which is to conceive and create children, through intercourse.
Yeah, that's valid. I think there are a lot of examples in futuristic literature about what humans or Earth would look like in 100,000 millennia, whatever, from now. One of the best books that I've ever read is The Forever War. And it was pretty allegorical to the Vietnam War in a certain sense. But the premise of it was that there was this no man's zone in space, and Earth ran into another faction. They decided to fight. And the guy, the main character, he went to fight this war. And he was off for 1 year. But the time dilation that he was gone for that 1 year was like 4 years on planet Earth or something like that.
Space facts.
Yeah. When he came back, everything was different. It was like when the Vietnam vets came back, they came back to a different America, right? And they didn't adjust well, and people didn't appreciate what they had been doing because the war was so distant from them. But he felt that way, and he went back because he couldn't deal with home life anymore. And he went for a longer term, and it was further away. And so by the time he was done and the war was over, he came back and humans look different. And whenever somebody brings up this argument, it always brings me back to this book, is that over time, the concerns that people have now become irrelevant slowly, but we can't grasp that concept because we're in the now.
Yeah. God, that's so true.
You can look back on a lot of different things probably in our, what we consider current, or in the past, currently, we would see that as like, oh man, I can't believe they thought it was ethical to put leeches on people all the time,
Yeah, right.
And, who are we to judge something that hasn't happened yet? I don't think I would be somebody who would fight it necessarily, because I think that it's really cool. But also it wouldn't be happening when I was trying to have kids, right? Because I'm not going to have more kids. So it doesn't really affect me all that much.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. That's so true. I mean, thinking about even how and my wife is going to chuckle when she hears this, how I relentlessly research a big purchase before I buy it and compare it to what
everything else,
the next model that might come out. Oh, the next one might have this, so maybe I shouldn't buy now and I should wait. But like the reality is, when you purchase that big ticket item, you're going to have it for many years. So you don't even know 5 years from now what the landscape will look like or how obsolete that thing will be. But you just think that, like, oh, I should wait. But like the reality is you can't even plan for something that you don't even know will exist. And that's what we all try to do. We all try to plan for that. And we all worry about these things that, aren't even something that we should even be considering because they're not even real.
Right. These are possibilities and speculations about possibilities of things. We don't know what people are going to use it for, right?
Yep.
What if it was, oh man, have you seen that movie with Matt Damon and he was sick and he was going to die and there was that colony in space that he could get to and they would just heal him?
This sounds so familiar, and I feel like yes, but I'm also remembering the awful, awful, awful Netflix movie Downsizing, and I don't think it's that one.
It wasn't a Netflix movie. It was an in-theaters movie, and it wasn't awful. It was just not good.
Just doesn't deserve to be an in-theaters movie, okay? It was terrible.
It was a not good
Terrible. I'll firmly stand behind this. I will not.
It was a nice love story about a man who found himself by making himself small.
I can't get on board. But what you're describing sounds familiar. I don't know if I've seen it, though.
Oh, I can't remember the name. It began with an E, but either way, he got sick.
Oh, Elysium or something?
Elysium, yeah. And like he had to get up, and that would be cool to be able to just sit in a chair, and then it scans you, and it takes care of any of the illnesses you have, or it heals bones, or it makes you not bald anymore. I don't know, like whatever it can do. This could be the beginning of that. I hope that the governments don't leave us here to rot and go up to space and start a space station with it. But
hey, man, with today's government, I would say the possibilities are endless. Also, really bad stuff happens on space stations. Watch the movie Life. Moving on. 2015 comes to an end. We're feeling pretty great about sequencing our genes, being able to create super soldiers. And then an epidemic hits us.
An epidemic, you say?
An absolute epidemic. People were running for the hills. Terrorism. The clown epidemic of 2016.
Yes. That was only 2016?
2016, where people were dressing up as clowns.
So long ago.
People were dressing up as clowns with knives and whatever else and scaring the shit out of people in dark alleys and forests and all these other places. Do you remember that?
Yeah, man, those like videos of people driving just down roads and seeing a clown standing on the edge of the woods was probably this. Like, I wouldn't be as scared if I ran into somebody on the street in an alley. Like driving down the road, seeing somebody at the edge of the woods in a clown costume would keep me up at night.
Probably, yeah. I mean, even though that I know I can run them over easily.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
What's the clown doing out by the woods?
What's it doing out there? Like in the alley is, he's probably going shopping, grabbing a baguette and heading home. What's he doing in the woods? What's he got going on?
What's he doing in the woods?
What's he doing in the woods?
What's he doing in the woods?
Clown epidemic of 2016 was, I feel that had to be viral advertising for Stephen King. Is it Stephen King's It? The movie It? Yeah. I feel like that's where it started, and then some, a bunch of redneck idiots took it too far. So the clown epidemic hits, and then we had the second saddest moment of 2016.
Which was?
Everyone's homie, Harambe, passed away.
R.I.P. Harambe.
Where a young child fell into Harambe's enclosure, and the guards gunned him down.
Gunned him down in cold blood.
The gorilla, not the child.
Not the child. The child lived.
He's doing fine.
I wonder how the child is doing.
I feel like he's going to be looking back at this moment.
Be like, why'd you kill the gorilla?
Yeah, right?
Also, when we were doing research for this episode, I was looking up things like that, and it reminded me of Elian Gonzalez.
What is that?
Do you remember?
Who's that?
Young Elian?
No, I don't.
Back in, oh God, I don't even know anymore. Maybe the late 90s, maybe the early 2000s. Elian Gonzalez's family was trying to get from Cuba to America, and they were on a raft. And the raft started to sink or something like that. And like his parents were eaten by sharks, and he ended up in Cuba.
Jesus.
And there was this big thing about it. I don't know. This is my like 9-year-old self remembering this.
Oh my God. Are you sure that you're not thinking of the hit movie? Fuck, what's its name?
Deep Water?
No, with the kid on the fucking tiger boat.
Life of Pi.
Life of Pi.
No, I'm not. This is real. This was real. Like Elian Gonzalez came over. He ended up staying with like his aunt and uncle or something in Florida for a bit, and then like ICE or whatever it was came and took him back to Cuba, and it was this like big thing in the news for a really long time.
Damn.
About whether or not this kid could stay or not because his parents were trying to defect from Cuba, and he had to go back and he had to live there, and he's grown up there and he went to college, and I think that he's been one of the kind of outspoken people against communism in Cuba since then.
Wow, so he's really made a life for himself.
I think he's still got a lot of coverage. Like he's sort of like a local hero in Cuba.
Damn.
Because of what he had gone through. I remember watching a lot of this stuff on the news. Like it was like a night raid and they went in and they like took him back and deported him. Yeah.
Wow, wild. I don't remember this. But how could anyone forget the tragedy of Harambe? I just had to bring it back real quick.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, it was legitimately the start of meme culture.
It truly was the absolute explosion of memes, and like they went mainstream. They hit Facebook. Like people just jumped on that bandwagon.
You still see references to Harambe on like if you watch ESPN College Football Saturdays. Like people are still holding up signs that say Harambe on them.
He died for our sins. Yeah, absolutely crazy. People made songs about this. There were videos. So many memes. A lot of stuff happened in 2016, though. So let's move on from Harambe and into the moment when all the nerds were getting out of their house and playing Pokemon Go, baby.
Pokemon!
For 1 month. For 1 month of the last decade, the world was at peace. Strangers were coming together, catching Pikachu and others.
Did you play?
I never played. No.
I played for 1 month.
I never played. I do occasionally see people playing on the subway.
A lot of people play.
Yeah, they still play, but not like they used to, where they were forming in groups, going out into parks, confusing the hell out of police.
Oh, they go out in droves, man. I mean, I work at a college. They go out in droves.
They're still hitting it.
Yeah, it's apparently it's like even way better than it was even then.
I do remember people saying the app had a lot of features missing, so I imagine now it's much
better. When it
better.
first came out, I remember that like I could go out with 100% battery and it would be like dead in like 2 hours.
I believe it. Yeah,
dead, and you're not doing anything other than walking around, really. So like the battery suckage from it was like something you've never seen.
Mm-hmm.
It was like PUBG on steroids. But it was fun. Like it kind of was just more of a nostalgic thing for me.
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
And then it kind of died out because like you had to be in like cities to get really good stuff, and it was just I don't know. It wasn't that great. It was cool, and then it was not that great.
Yeah, but for that one brief shining moment, all the people, it was the rage, man. It was hitting the local news. It was hitting the national news. It was everyone was playing it, and I think you hit it on the head. I never played Pokemon when I was younger. I never had a Game Boy or early consoles, so I never played. So I didn't have that nostalgia. But I think that's what kind of grabbed people and brought them in.
For sure, it did.
And then moving on, so many things happened in 2016. This is probably my favorite year just to research, but definitely not to live through. The Zika epidemic, Brexit happened, the Flint water crisis began. Trump won the presidency. Think about all of these celebrity deaths. Prince, David Bowie, Alan Rickman, Gene Wilder, Muhammad Ali, Leonard Cohen, Alan Thicke, George Michael, and Carrie Fisher all died in 2016.
Wow. First of all, that's a lot of very famous people. Second of all, that seems like it was so long ago.
So long ago. It's amazing. I don't know, man. Time flies at the same time, but it still feels like that was yesterday.
I always find it to be sad when I'm watching movies where people have passed away, and I think about it and it takes me like out of it, and I'm like, oh damn, like that sucks. Like they're such good actors and actresses and singers, and
yeah. I still think about that also when I'm listening to music and the band members have died. It's just like you're listening to something that someone who will never be heard again. It's really sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad to think about it.
That's what I think that's like a big reason why certain kinds of music become so profound after somebody dies because you get to appreciate even if it's too soon, like their works, and you get that's what's left of their mind.
Yeah.
And like maybe not even the person they were, but like that version of the person they were, or that part of the person they were.
Yeah, everyone digs to find, what were they working on? What's the last record that they're going to try to release posthumously? Their sales, whenever someone passes away who's a musician, the sales on iTunes just like skyrocket because everyone is like, oh wow, I totally forgot, I haven't listened to that artist in a while, let me download their stuff.
Right.
Definitely not buy their CDs because no one buys CDs anymore.
I very much that's so Paul McCartney actually, every time he comes out with an album, releases like records and things like that so that people can, he says that it's not worth the money if you're not trying to sell physical things to people, because that's also a piece of art.
So art is kind of how I see vinyl records. I think that's why it's coming back, because everyone is so past the point of downloading. No one has iPods anymore, so no one's really downloading music. Everyone's just streaming it. So now you don't have that or anything physical in your hands to say like, oh, this is a piece of music that I really enjoy, I can hold it. And so I think that's why vinyls are coming back. And I'll do the same thing. So I really like purchasing records of bands that I really, really like. I don't just buy random records. I don't go to the record store and just pick up random stuff. I seek out those albums that I really like and treasure and want to support the artist. And I also want to, feel something when I pick up that record and put it on the turntable.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have a pretty extensive record collection. I have all of my dad's records from like the 70s and 80s.
That's awesome.
All of them.
I need to grab my dad's. I know he has a ton.
It's pretty awesome.
Just sitting in the basement.
I love them. I think it's great. I don't listen to them enough, but I love them. We have 3 record players in our house.
Damn. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I have a bunch of newer stuff too. So like I have like Alexi Murdoch stuff. I have Fall Out Boy. I have Brian Fallon, Gaslight Anthem. Just a lot of really cool newer stuff that I appreciate having physical copies of those things, because if people are over, it's not just about turning on the Bluetooth and playing music, because we have that really nice living room in the house, right?
Yeah. And
so when people come over and it's like smaller groups, we really like to just like say like, hey, let's listen to this, or like, this is a really good one, you guys need to hear this. And like listening to an album all the way through, I did not know this. Most people don't listen to albums all the way through.
Yeah, I realized that too, because people would just download the singles.
Yeah,
or shuffle.
Never, ever have I just listened to singles of anybody that I've ever listened to.
Yep.
One of my best hobbies, like one of my like solo hobbies that I have, is to find a piece of music and go like, oh, that's really good. Who is that? And then I will go all the way back to the beginning of that band or singer. And I will listen to everything that they have ever written.
Yep.
And I will just look up like, oh, well, what were they doing when this happened? Or what were they going through a divorce? Or like, when did the band break up? What was going on? And like, that's my favorite thing to do.
Yes. I'm so with you.
I love it. I love it so much. That's how I've discovered a lot of people. I remember the first band that I ever did it with was Matchbox 20. And so that's probably the band that I know like the most about almost anything. I mean, I know a shit ton about the Beatles too, but, if you don't know a lot about the Beatles, I suggest doing so. Not everybody does. I had a conversation with one of my my coworkers the other day, and he didn't know anything about the Beatles. Like he's like, no man, like I listened to hip hop and stuff and R&B and stuff growing up. Like the Beatles were not part of white culture. The Beatles were, or they were a part of white culture. They were not a part of black culture. And so he and I had this conversation about like the people who revolutionized rock and roll were the Beatles, and the people who revolutionized R&B and hip hop had nothing to do with the Beatles. And so like that was a really cool thing to learn from him. And so then I went home and I started looking up a bunch of other stuff, and I learned a lot about like Tupac and Biggie and things like that in that week of me just like listening to their music and learning about it. It's really, really cool stuff to learn about.
We definitely have to do an episode on music. Something with music.
It'll be my favorite episode that we ever do.
Yeah, definitely. And to wrap up vinyls real quick, totally inconvenient, by the way. Completely inconvenient. Like you're listening to one side and then you're having a good time. A couple songs go by, literally like 3 songs, and then you're like, wait, I have to turn it over now? Like, it's done?
Well, so a cool thing about vinyls, or like a fun little fact about it, is like they had to condense it into a certain amount of time because you can only fit a certain amount of time onto a vinyl. And that's why records had like a set standard for how long songs were and like the order in which you played songs.
That makes so much sense. But also
music, so like albums prior to like the Beatles were not albums. They were, you got famous enough to have a bunch of different singles and they would put them onto an album and say this was your album. And the Beatles, along with a couple of other bands, decided like, hey, that's not how we want to make music anymore. We're going to write 10 to 12 songs
and put them in a specific order that we want them to be.
Order to, you know, to tell a story or to get a certain mood going or do whatever. And like, that was the creation of what like albums became, but it took a while to get there.
That might be the target for our next episode. Well, a episode, just like the birth of the concept album. Very fascinating.
Oh man, we could go through so many. There are so many good concept albums.
So many. I just think going back to vinyls, how it works. All right, you have a needle running through a little groove in such a way that it produces sound. It just blows my mind. I can't even fathom how they figured out how to do that.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah, it's really cool.
And the sound actually sounds like ultra high quality, not like I don't understand it. It's amazing to me.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah. Anyway, so back to 2016.
Yeah, one last thing. Cubs won the series in 2016.
Wow, yeah, the Cubbies.
The Cubbies.
That was pretty cool. And I'm not a baseball fan. If anything, I picked the team that my dad liked, and I picked the Red Sox, which happens to be the Orioles and the Red Sox who play against each other. So that is like the extent. I generally root for those two teams, and then I don't care. But the Cubs winning the World Series was pretty awesome.
That was cool. I think all of America was rooting for them.
I tend to watch baseball only when the World Series is on.
Same.
That is it.
Playoffs, maybe, but really just the World Series.
Nope, that's it. It's literally the World Series. And the most vivid memory I have, you don't even remember. So, friends off.
True.
When Hideki Matsui crushed it in the World Series, you don't even remember that. And we were watching it together. It was great. It's a great time.
I do not recall.
It's a good time. So what do we have in 2017 that is, one, fun and entertaining, and two, completely avoiding any bad thing or Donald Trump?
Well, I can think of one thing. His wonderful meat antics took the world by storm. I'm talking about Salt Bae.
Salt Bae.
You know what?
The thing about that guy, if you watched any of his videos, he still does the Salt Bae thing a lot. He's very active on the social medias. Does he not seem like a giant douche?
Honepi.
Like, why are you wearing sunglasses inside, dude?
He's a Turkish butcher and chef. He has his own Wikipedia page. This is what I'm reading from.
A Turkish butcher and chef?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
He owns a chain of steakhouses. And his technique for preparing and seasoning meat became an internet meme.
Yeah, he's pretty violent with the meat.
I'm scared for his pointer finger, to be honest with you.
One day.
It's going to come off.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Though, have you watched any of those Turkish cooking videos? They became pretty popular on like social media for a while.
I have not.
Like, their food looks so good.
I think I'll have to take a trip.
So good.
How's Turkey these days?
I mean, we were avoiding Donald Trump.
Oh, okay.
But their food looks really good.
So he's gotten not so great reviews on his food. I'm going to be honest with you.
Really?
According to Wikipedia, several of his restaurants got mixed reviews.
Mixed how?
Described as overpriced. Professional reviews in 2018 of his New York City steakhouse were generally negative. In fact, New York Post, it's the New York Post, but the New York Post says his restaurant was public ripoff number 1.
Oh, really?
GQ wrote that his steak was mundane and the hamburgers were overcooked. Oh, my.
My God,
they're really lighting into him.
Salty. Get it?
I get it.
You get it?
I get it.
Yeah. What? Okay. So as you're reading this, that like these magazines and newspapers are like ripping somebody apart. I was like, who gives a shit what magazines and newspapers think anymore?
Seriously.
In this scenario, it's 2017.
But then I thought, who gives a shit what we say?
All 56 of our viewers.
Hey.
Woo-hoo!
What else we got? So the fidget spinner happened.
My kids had so many goddamn fidget spinners.
Wasn't
like,
one enough?
It was so annoying. And then I played with one and I wanted all of them.
I never had one. I never got the draw.
It was pretty cool.
It didn't do anything for me.
No, it's pretty cool, man. It was, I mean, like not worth the $12 they were selling them for, right? But
no. Oh God.
For a day, just to like, it's super cool.
Well, then if you want, well, I think actually the first one was the fidget cube, right?
I had a fidget cube when they first came out, but they were cheap. They were so cheap.
And that's the thing. So I recently found out that the people who came up with the idea and kickstarted the fidget cube, literally everyone knocked them off. Like everyone. And so far as to like imitate their brand entirely, like took their logo, pretended they were the people doing the Kickstarter, everything.
Really?
Oh yeah.
That's what you get for not getting a patent.
Yep. That's what you get for kickstarting. But think about all the pallets and pallets of unsold fidget cubes somewhere in the world right now.
Think about the pallets and pallets of unsold everything in the world.
That's terrifying. All the plastic.
I think about that someday. Like, so, you can easily put like plastic and pollution things aside and out of mind. And then when you think about it, like truly think about how much plastic there is. And I need to do better about recycling and being mindful of buying things with one-time use plastic. Even just my household makes me cringe a little bit.
I was literally saying to my wife tonight, one of the things that upsets me that I never, ever even considered pretty much up until a couple years ago, and I probably still wouldn't consider that much if I didn't live where I lived, because when you go down south, they still serve everything in freaking styrofoam. But like one of the things that bothers me so much is just how much plastic I see that I feel like, is this necessary? Do we need to have the packaging like this?
Yep. Good luck finding a plastic bag down south, though. They still use paper.
Oh, good.
Paper bags.
Nice.
And it's really nice.
Good for them.
It's really nice. When I went down south, every store that I stopped at, every grocery store that we were at, they only had paper bags, and it was really nice, actually.
I like that. Yeah, Boston, some suburbs of Boston, I think even the city of Boston has banned plastic bags. Or, well, they ban you from getting them for free. You have to pay for them. So it cuts it down on a little bit, but sometimes you really do need a plastic bag. Sometimes, like, you need to pick up your dog poop with plastic bags. Paper doesn't work.
We have reusable bags that we take grocery shopping most times, but like if I stop on the way home from work, right, like I don't have the bags with me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they're putting like 2 items in a bag.
I know, right?
And like handing you a new one, and like I'll be like, hey, just put everything in, doesn't matter to me, like as few bags as possible, please.
Yeah.
And like they'll still do it. It's like 3 things. I'm like, no, just load the thing up. Like I'll be fine. It's going from the cart to my car to my house. Like I can make it the 12 feet from my driveway to my front door just fine.
Yeah. And then you think about how all this plastic will just never go away. Like it doesn't degrade. It doesn't disappear. You can't like bury it and come back 50 years later and there's nothing there. It's still there. And it's still the exact same shape.
Yeah. I bet you in our lifetime, there is going to be a massive cleanup effort for plastics because eventually it's this plastic-based society thing it's really going to lose its edge.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see a major like cleanup initiative to try and like clear the oceans and clear landfills of plastics and things like that. And we're going to try and kind of reduce that and reuse it for whatever other reason. So it's no longer a one-time use plastic.
Mm-hmm.
And we won't have to create disposable plastics anymore.
Yep. I really hope so.
Even going to like the grocery store now, I don't put my fruits in plastic bags anymore, or fruits and vegetables. I just put it in the cart.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna just peel it anyway, like what's the point?
Peel it or wash it anyway, right?
Yeah.
And even so, probably with a lot of vegetables, if they're going into a soup and stuff, like I don't even really wash my vegetables and stuff.
Yeah.
I've lived 30 years without getting sick from it. I'll probably live another 30.
Probably.
Hopefully.
If you're shooting for 60, you got to aim higher, my dude.
Well, I did stop smoking, so that was a thing.
Okay. All right. Baby steps.
But I told you, I saw on my doctor's record, they said I was obese, and that hurt.
Oof. I just don't believe it. You're
hurt
big
to
boned.
see. I'm big boned.
Yeah.
It said diagnosis. It listed the two things, and then it said obesity, and I was like, "Ooh, ouch, doc! Why'd you do that to me, bro?"
Ouch. Not okay.
Yeah, but I think the plastic thing is becoming more and more in the forefront of my mind.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
But it's such a hard thing to shake. Like, you can't buy bread without plastic.
I know. There's just some things like you just need plastic for.
Good luck getting your deli meats without plastic. I'm sure, though, like Wegmans is really good about it. Like, you can bring in your own containers for things and just ask them to put the sticker on the container.
Yeah. It's just so much work. It's so less convenient.
Mm-hmm. It is. But then you have places like Aldi that, like, you have to bring your own bags.
Mm.
And people like knock places like Aldi, but Aldi in Europe, well, they were owned by the same family, and they're two separate things now technically, but Aldi and Trader Joe are affiliated in some way.
Oh, okay.
And so like Aldi actually is really good, like organic products. Not that I really buy into the organic thing. I don't think genetically modified foods are bad. But that's beside the point. They have really good products, and you can get a lot of them there without plastics too.
I like that.
So that's not everything, obviously. Like, you're going to get your cereals in plastic bags and stuff like that, but they've eliminated a lot of plastic from their telling you to bring your own bags, and I'm pretty sure that the bags they sell are not 100% plastic. So
yeah, some of the grocery stores are making them out of some compostable material, which is good. They have a different feel. They're kind of stretchy, kind of starchy feeling. Yeah.
Starchy feeling. Yeah.
So that's good. I support it. I mean, it's almost annoying how much I think about it, to me personally, because I'm just like, really don't need that much plastic in there. But then you think about things, we're talking about consumer goods, but think about our cars. So much of our cars are made out of plastic. The undercarriage, the entire dashboard and all of the pieces of trim, everything's plastic. Everything. It's not going anywhere. It's not going back to the earth. So hopefully people are waking up to it and recycling and, making things in a sustainable way.
But even recycling, a lot of things, they're so stringent on how you can recycle and what things can be recycled.
Literally, some things cannot be recycled. Yeah.
Yeah. Like colored cardboards can't be recycled.
So it's like, what happens to those things?
They go to landfills.
Yeah.
We at work, we have a farm as part of our one of our majors, and they take all of our cardboards that are not pizza boxes. Don't count. You can't use pizza boxes to recycle, and they shred them up and they use them as like cow beds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're doing some stuff to try and kind of remedy some of it, but you can't use like used cardboards to recycle. You can't use colored cardboards to recycle.
Damn.
So weird, right?
So weird. Well, we just got off a big tangent there, but how about Fire Festival?
Lit, man.
It was
lit family.
It's such a good time. It was a freaking blast.
That Fire Festival is one of the biggest screw ups of like rich white kids ever, right?
Everyone was laughing at all of those influencers that were stranded in the freaking FEMA tents with a slice of white bread and grilled cheese or white bread and American cheese, like a deluxe meal that they were promised. It was just like rations.
It's crazy how that fell apart so fast too, because it wasn't intended to be a scam.
No, it wasn't.
It was intended to be a real thing, and then over time, like, communication and organization just broke down, and they didn't tell anybody.
They legitimately believed it was going to happen. Everyone was like, no, this is going to happen. And then it got to a point where things started looking like they weren't going to happen. But they just kept believing, no, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. And then, it just completely fell apart. It was a disaster.
Didn't it take them like days and days to get people off the island?
Yeah. Well, so everything was set up, and then a couple days before, it just started pouring rain. And they didn't have time to finish setting up, and all the people showed up, and there was nothing at all setup that looked even remotely like the pictures. And that just panic ensued. It was just crazy. Just a breakdown.
There were
of
jokes about
communication.
like a Lord of the Flies and like it
Oh,
was
yeah.
just bad.
Yeah, and then of course all the people coming to this event are people who are super into social media, dare I say, embellishing some things. So they're going on Twitter and going on Instagram and just blasting everything, like letting the world know that they feel like they're being called into like a war zone or something like that.
There's nothing worse than an influencer scorn.
I know, right? And it just was just a mess. It was a mess. People were stranded for a long time.
Wasn't there a court case that was just settled about it?
I don't know, actually.
I don't really know. Maybe I'm just talking out my ass.
Aren't we all, though?
Yeah, I mean, that's what this whole podcast is. So.
Literally.
Welcome to our world.
But there's two pretty decent documentaries about Fire Festival. One is slightly questionable because the people who created it, I believe, are involved in or were involved in the actual marketing of the real life event. So I think there's a little bit of conflict of interest there.
That's weird.
Yeah, right. So there's a Netflix one.
Yeah,
there's a Netflix one and there's a Hulu one, and so and they're both good because they're both interesting and they don't like stick up for it. Like they definitely are, telling it like it is for the most part, I would say. But if you want both sides, and I recommend both sides because they tell the story a slightly different way. I would recommend watching both of them, but I think the Hulu documentary was the one I enjoyed a little bit more.
What's interesting to me is that these things constitute news.
Mm-hmm.
That might be one of the things that as we look back at our youth about like how social media influenced what we believed was news instead of things that may have mattered a bit more.
Oh, yeah.
Because this wasn't political. This wasn't a thing that really hurt more than a couple hundred people who wanted to go to a festival,
Yep.
And it dominated headlines.
Yeah,
and we have a lot more things going on that are really influential, and over time we're going to see this oversaturation, or we're going to look back and see the oversaturation of news and see that we kind of got caught off guard with a lot of things that people could have been interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I would think, and Fire Festival is not going to be a thing that I remember when I'm an old man.
I don't think so. When you're in a ripe old age of 60.
Of 59, because I'll be dead at 60.
Oh, true.
Okay. Yeah, 59 on my deathbed.
I mean, that's a good life.
In this scenario, I die on my birthday.
It's a good life. I mean, if you were born in 1940.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was 1940. If you were born in 1840.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they say that the first person to live to 150 is already alive. So maybe it's me.
Oh, yeah. Maybe it's you.
Maybe it's me. I mean, my grandparents are like 90.
Same.
My dad's parents are like 90. My grandma still rides her bike every day, golfs, and goes swimming every day.
Hell yeah, sister.
Yeah.
Love it.
She's pretty great. Should call my grandma.
It bodes well for us. And wouldn't you like to pass those traits on to your children with genetic modification? It could happen. It could happen.
Okay, so in 2018, again, avoiding anything to do with current political movements, even though we know that down the road people are going to remember political things, right? I'd like to say that a lot of this episode was not focused on a lot of politics and a lot of things of that nature. We've been talking about cool things.
Yeah.
So I'd like to stay on that track and talk about a general theme. So I'm going to combine 18 and 19 into one for scientific reasons.
Okay. Sounds good.
And technological reasons. 3D printing is the coolest thing, and people are going to remember this era as the start of the cool part of 3D printing.
Definitely. 100%.
So in both 2018 and 2019, 3D printing has taken on two different forms. So in 2018, one of the coolest things is we have begun to 3D print human tissue and organs, which is obviously a game changer, right?
I mean, that goes back to the conspiracy theory thing instantly in my brain. But in no way could this be a bad thing. A problem with a kidney? Grow another one. You know, no more transplant waiting lists.
At that point, you can grow your own kidney back, probably.
By
the time this happens. Well, that's another thing. So that again, when I was looking stuff up, like they're starting to create tissue in like petri dishes and labs. Like stem cell research has become this thing where they're cloning organs and they're doing all these things. So like this comes back to specific medicine for you, for Dan.
Mm-hmm.
You have a problem with your kidney. Give us 6 months. We will grow your kidney back to a point that we can put it in your body. We will, or we'll take those stem cells. We will create all those stem cells, and then we will 3D build your kidney, and we'll put it back in you.
Yeah, no chance of rejection. Everyone's happy.
You don't have to take those rejection medications for the rest of your life. You don't have to worry about all this stuff. And over time, you know that these things are going to become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to make.
Yep.
It blows my mind to think that eventually medicine could get to this point, and it will, because there will be money in it.
Yeah.
Like in one way or another, there will be money in these. I think that a lot of people think that one of the biggest conspiracies is that they've already created a cure for cancer and they're just holding it because there's no money in curing cancer. That can't be true.
No way.
Because there is a way to make money and create revenue, because if you have happier people, they will put more money into the economy, and the people who have the money are already, it's not like they're only invested in cancer research, right? Like these people are making money over a lot of things. They have a diverse portfolio of finances, and so they'll find ways to make money elsewhere.
I mean, if you're rich, or even if you're poor and you have cancer and someone says, well, we could give you the cure, but it's going to cost you, every single one of those people would be like, take all of my money, take every single thing I have.
Yeah, like here, I will,
of course,
I will
pay everything.
pay for the cure for cancer to save my life.
Yeah,
sure. And if you have insurance, chances are you're not going to end up becoming destitute from it.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are flaws in that system, but
yeah, let's not get into that. But
insurance covers treatment for things,
Right.
And so eventually, when those things reduce in cost, it will be covered by your insurance, and people will still get it. Therefore, your insurance will cover it, and that's how they make money.
Right.
But I think this is one of the coolest things to think about, and I think in science fiction they make it look so easy that it takes away the awe a little bit from like a potential technological breakthrough like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That we are literally growing parts of bodies now, and soon enough we'll be able to put these things back in. It doesn't have to be an artificial like heart. It doesn't have to be an artificial or like a stent, it doesn't have to be those anymore, because you can replace the thing.
I mean, spoiler alert, I guess, Westworld, it's kind of the whole thing where it's you have robots first, and then all of a sudden, we can grow people,
It's one of the staples of a futuristic television show or story or book or whatever, but it's always dystopian in those.
Always. Yep.
And I like to believe that the people who run things are not supervillains. Like, people are flawed, yes, but people aren't supervillains. They're not trying, other than my son, they are not trying to take over the world.
You beat me to it again. I was going to say, just make sure your son doesn't become CEO of a super corporation responsible for growing human organs.
I really want to see those kinds of things to come to fruition in my lifetime. I want to be able to see something that is truly game changing, and not just the foundations of those, because we missed that first big boom of certain things, right? We missed seeing the effect of electricity in every home, and then the progression of TVs and gadgets and things. Like, we came in the middle of a weird one of like moving to digital.
Mm-hmm.
Where analog was already there when we were born.
Yeah.
So like the digital thing, we're kind of seeing that before our eyes, but we're not seeing the next stage of it.
Yeah. We were seeing like the evolution of the thing, but not the new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to see like the new thing that blows people's minds, like truly blows people's minds.
Yeah. It's like when you're buying an iPhone, do you buy like the version that's just a slight variation or upgrade over last year's model, or do you get the new one with a brand new form factor and an entirely new screen and all that stuff with no home button anymore,
Man, that was such an adjustment though.
Yeah, it still is for me. I just got a new phone. It's very weird.
It's very strange not having home buttons.
But I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like no one wants to be in the upgrade phase. We want to just get the new thing at this point.
And that's so I would imagine that while people are announcing certain breakthroughs, there are a lot of companies and businesses and probably governments that have technology that is far beyond what we know about publicly.
Probably, yeah.
I would love to know what that stuff is, because I would understand the idea of having, especially things that can be used strategically or as weaponry for, national security purposes. You don't want to tell everybody what you've got.
Yeah, right.
Because the government, just like technology, is building things 10 years out.
Mm-hmm.
Probably more than that at this point, I would imagine, considering the rate of speed technology moves. IBM just this last year completed like the world's best and biggest computer that is like it quantum mechanic. Oh, I don't understand
Sounds right.
computers.
No,
I don't understand. But this thing is just released, and I guarantee you they're working on things that are far beyond this already. These are just the things that they're launching as promotional packets.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds every year it sounds like IBM or one of those big companies is coming out with like the most powerful supercomputer ever created, and it just keeps getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why everybody has AI in their house now, right? Like everybody has one form of AI. And that wasn't readily available even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But you have, Amazon and Google and Microsoft and all of these companies that have some sort of, whether it's a startup device or something, these tools learn and they store things in the cloud and they understand you a little bit better, and they're working faster.
Yeah. I mean, all of our phones do it. Every single one of us. Like Android phones especially, they have the Google Assistant on there. And
Google Assistant's pretty cool.
It tracks you. It knows where your work is because it figures out the patterns of where your location starts and where it ends. It figures out how long you're at certain locations. So then it tells you, oh, you're at work or you're at this one location between 9 and 5. So that must mean that's your work. So we'll show you your commute from home to work.
Apple does that like really subtly based on your its predictive sort of searching. So if I open up Safari or Google, whatever I'm using at the time, and I, instead of using like a Lowe's app, right? If I'm just Googling things, I've seen it before. Just this last week, I was Googling like rakes at Lowe's. I was Googling a walk behind lawnmower and a wheelbarrow. And then when I went to Google the very next time on my Apple keyboard, it popped up like gardening equipment, fall cleanup, and prepping for winter.
It made its way to like the actual input of the keyboard. Wow, that's awesome. I haven't seen that.
And I was like, whoa, this is so weird, but I liked it. It was cool. Those things are awesome.
It's pretty wild. And sometimes it's obtrusive and like in your face and too much and kind of creepy. Other times it's like, okay, I can accept this. It is making my life a little bit easier.
And I mean, that's probably them saying like 10 years from now, we've already got something planned and we need to make people used to this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where like these scientists and researchers and analysts, they all know what they're doing. I would say that smartphones are the most intuitive thing that we use, period, end of story. Doesn't matter the brand.
Mm-hmm.
And so their research, their R&D is essentially like using this data to make better products.
Yeah. I mean,
and you can paint that as villainous. I understand 100% how you could do that.
Yeah.
But again, like we were talking about earlier, no one's going to care in the long term because this will be the new normal. So that leads into like, there has been a development where they have figured out perfect online privacy, which seems kind of like bullshit to me, right?
There is no perfect online privacy.
It can't be
not
perfect
in today's climate. Not right now.
It can't be, but apparently, and I don't know all of these words, a new cryptographic protocol called zero knowledge proof may help for true internet privacy and make it become a real reality. Apparently, this digital currency, I don't know, the Zcash is what it was called.
Okay, so like a crypto, like Bitcoin.
Yeah, a cryptocurrency. Yeah,
cryptocurrency. Yep.
The developers of that used a message called ZK Snark, zero knowledge, succinct, non-interactive argument of knowledge, to give users the power of transact like completely anonymously. Couldn't be tracked, fully encrypted. And so for banks, this could be a way to use like blockchains and payment systems without having to even divulge the consumer's data of any kind. It's like truly anonymous, and on the back end is where it's all held and completely not accessible.
Interesting.
And the reason I say this is bullshit is because eventually someone's going to figure that out and it will just be commonplace, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
But they'll have to figure out a new one. But I think that, we talked about that a little earlier. Everybody's got our stuff already. So I guess this doesn't matter necessarily, but it could protect future transactions.
Yeah. I feel like the future is going to be weird for the internet, especially. I mean, right now you've got VPNs and you can basically get anywhere you want on the internet. I think it's going to be a lot more, not locked down isn't the word, but I feel like you're going to have to submit all of your information to ISPs. They'll know exactly who you are, where you're going, what you're doing. They already know that, I guess, but I feel like it's going to be
open
even
information
more open.
Yeah.
Where it's like
everyone will understand
license or something,
But what would have to happen is there would have to be a trust in government again, because it's not just going to be a private sector thing. The government would have to be trusted enough to monitor the private sector to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, no matter what people do with the internet, no matter how open it becomes, there will always be that group of people that will find a way to have a private one,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like the dark web or whatever. It'll always happen.
I really don't understand the dark web.
I don't even understand it either.
Could I just type in a dark web email or web address?
I don't think so. I think what you have to do is download some other type of web browser to get to it. I don't even know. I've never tried.
And I don't think there's a whole lot of stuff on there that I'd ever want to see or
not
be
really,
a part
no.
of. So,
no, unless you're up to no good.
Yeah. Only the bad kids go to the dark web.
Yeah. Only your son goes there in his supervillain quest.
He's a supervillain. Actually, I don't even know. He wouldn't even know how to turn the computer on.
Probably not, but that's okay. One day.
One day.
We'll get there. Anyway.
Anywho.
I guess wrapping all this up, I mean, we didn't talk about any specific cultural event in 2019 there, but I think it's kind of clear that no matter what we say about the 2010s, it all comes down to technology.
It comes down to technology, and whether we talked about it or not, the polarization of opinion, right? We have a lot of technological and scientific breakthroughs that are truly going to define the way that we interact over time. And that's going to play in pretty hard to the way that I would say 2012 to 2020 is defining of our culture and younger generations of how people are going to learn how to interact, how people voice their opinions, how people become more productive or less productive, but everybody is just constantly engaged with each other. And whether we like it or not.
Yeah, I mean, that ties in with the technology. It ties in with privacy, because I think that's the big thing for me that I will probably remember the 2010s for is the explosion of the meme culture, the more mainstream use of the internet, the rise of Amazon and Facebook, but then with that, the privacy concerns and everything that comes with that. I think that's probably my number one overall. We had things like style trends, those things come and go in each decade. Cryptocurrency and privacy and technology. We had, the death of traditional media. I think print, CDs, magazines, broadcast TV, and radio. But it all comes back to technology. Like no matter what of these things, no matter what I'm saying here, like swipe dating apps, Obama and Trump, misinformation, fake news. It's all technology. Everything is technology.
The modern technology.
Yeah,
because I think over the course of history, it's always been technology, right? But
yeah.
The way that we are thinking about technology now is this sense of everything is in one place and the oversaturation of it and being able to figure it out. We're in the rough patch right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing all these cool things. We're talking about them, but right now everybody's not adjusting on the same level. It's like trying to explain how the internet worked to your parents when you knew how it was going. But even then we were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We were sharing our information all the time.
Yeah, to anyone, strangers.
And now people aren't. But eventually, we're going to see these ebbs and flows of how people are using our data. Mm-hmm. And we're going to look back on that 30 years from now and say, man, that was messed up, but I'm glad we're in a better place now.
Yeah.
Man, this time was really turbulent for a lot of people too, but I'm glad we're in a better place now.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's for everybody.
We'll have learned a lot from these years. And I think I keep saying tech, but I think what I'm really trying to get at is it's the accessibility of it, the availability of it, and just the speed of all our devices now makes it so it's very, very convenient. It's no longer inconvenient to Google search something. Like you're not going over to a computer, you're not using dial-up internet and waiting for that to connect, going to a web page that takes 25 seconds to load. You can simply say to your phone, "Hey Google," or "Hey Siri," or whatever, and all of a sudden you've got the answers to whatever you're looking for.
I could literally
Instantly.
just be like, "Hey Siri, what's Dan's address?" And it'll tell me, because like I have your address in my phone.
Yeah, instantly.
It's insane to me.
Yeah. So I think that's really what it comes down to. It's like the speed at which we can access information is the fastest it's ever been. And so now because of that, because we are all walking around with the entirety of human knowledge in our pockets, essentially, there's no excuse to be ignorant. Like you can't have an argument anymore with someone who is so set in their ways that they're like, no, this is exactly what happened. This event happened. I'm just some random argument I'm making up in my head. You can instantly prove them wrong.
But that also drives like dissent too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because if you believe in something, regardless, it doesn't matter whether or not you're having that conversation with somebody. And people are losing touch on how to have conversations, but we're starting to see a little bit of a regrowth of that.
Yep.
And I appreciate that because I've always valued like face-to-face conversation. And I think we've all gotten lost in the digital age a little bit over time. Like there was a time where I think we stopped kind of having conversations with people. Mm-hmm. And then I realized how bad that was and how that doesn't help. If you get lost in your own device and you get lost in your own ability to look up what you want to look up and talk about what you want to talk about and surround yourself with a bunch of chirping birds that sound exactly like you're not growing as a person.
And you just nailed it. This is the problem with Facebook and with social media in general is you follow the things that you like and you're never exposed to a dissenting voice. You're never exposed to like the other point of view, which may not be wrong necessarily. It may just be different. And so when you're surrounded by everything that's just reaffirming what your belief is, you're not growing at all. You're just getting deeper and deeper into whatever belief you hold true to yourself.
Absolutely. And while certain things may like trigger you to be angry and you think it is wrong, it doesn't necessarily make it wrong, even though you believe it is. Like your reality or your perception is your own reality, right?
Yeah.
So like you can't negate that. And somebody else might believe something else, right? If you think red Skittles are the worst kind of Skittles in the entire world, and I disagree with you, it doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're wrong to me or a larger group of people because everybody loves red Skittles.
You're entitled to your own opinions, not your own facts.
Right. But then there are facts. And I think that we're finding our way as a society through that muck of what is speculative and what is objectively true. And then you have the right to make your own decisions, and which gives you the right to have your opinion. You know? It becomes weird, but we're going to come out of that on like in a better place. People are going to have more empathy and more understanding whether or not they agree on things.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to come out of this weird stage we're in. I think we kind of hit the peak of that maybe a couple of years ago, especially during the last election. That was a big thing that happened.
I mean, we might see it pretty big again coming in the next election, but
I don't think it's gone, but I think people are they're more woke, fam. If I may use a millennial term.
For sure, younger generations, I think, are becoming more understanding whether or not they agree or disagree, because there are a lot of people that aren't being represented the way they need to be, and that's 100% people are just not communicating well, right? Because if you put two people in a room, chances are they're going to come to some understanding. If you put 10 million people on the internet, boy, get ready, because this is not going to be fun.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the thing. With all this technology, we have to learn how to use it to communicate better and not worse.
Right.
And now we've kicked that horse to death. And this has been Dive. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you didn't, I don't care. Tweet us at HDDive, and we will see you next week.
Love you. Stay pack.